It has been escalating. And the question is, when will Putin stop? He's pushing and pushing. President Trump keeps saying how disappointed he is. But it seems like everything we just said is actually evidence that NATO countries are no longer going to sit back and take it. What is your biggest concern as far as Article 4 that we've heard, a few weeks, and where this may be going if it continues?
Well, here's a couple things that I know, and you've really framed this conversation well in the lead up to this moment. But first of all, Vladimir Putin is going to continue if he senses weakness. And that's why I'm making sure here in Brussels that our allies invest and as fast as they can at the speed of relevance in their own defenses, according to Article 3 of the Washington Treaty. That was signed some 76 years ago, that says each individual ally will take care of their own defense and therefore the collective defense. And we need to make sure we have strong allies. And some of the allies are already there. We have allies like Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. They're close to 5% of GDP on defense right now as we speak. There are some countries that are taking some more time to get up to speed. But, this is what we need to do as an alliance, is we need to have that strength. And because of that strength, and Putin won't sense any weakness from us, that strength will ensure the peace.
One move to add on to that and further that is President Trump's messaging ambassador. We saw him post a few days ago saying, I think Ukraine can take all of its borders back. The White House also, there was a report during the United Nations General Assembly week that the White House is weighing Ukraine's request for long-range Tomahawk missiles. That is sending a message of strength to Putin. But obviously, the biggest message is, let's end this war. That's the message President Trump is still hoping for.
Yeah, he's obviously trying to create the situation, both through actions and words, but most importantly, actions, to bring Vladimir Putin to the table to ultimately bring a peace deal, because he is absolutely right. We have 1,000 soldiers approximately every single day that are dying on the battlefield, mostly Russian soldiers that are gaining, in the last 4 years, they've gained a total of 19% of Ukraine. If you had a snail walk across Ukraine, it would have already been to Poland. That's how President Trump used the term paper tiger. And Russia does not look super strong against a country that, quite frankly, is not as big and doesn't have as big an economy. But, Vladimir Putin is going to continue this meat grinder war until we, as the collective West, continue to maintain our resolve and create the situation. That includes our NATO allies to stop buying oil and gas. There's certain countries that are way too dependent, and there are many other things, including buying U.S. weapons.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, I mean, that's been a big bone of contention because, you mentioned the meat grinder, and we just put in that story where the biggest call up in 9 years. So that's another message reacting to the messaging. But when it comes to sanctions, when it comes to these countries that are allies that are funding the war, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban says Hungary will continue to source fossil fuels from Russia. It says Hungarian economy would be on its knees if they didn't. Now, we know that there was a good relationship between Viktor Orban, President Trump. But this is, where sometimes there is a big question, and there's been pressure on India as well. Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have a good relationship. But then when it comes to, funding the war machine by Putin, their buying of the energy and the oil does come into conflict here with what the U.S. and the West mission is.
It does. And I've had individual conversations with our allies that continue to buy Russian oil and gas. And, we're working with them to, make sure that it isn't disruptive to their economy. But at the same time, they do what other NATO allies have done, like Slovakia and Poland, that have weaned themselves off of Russian oil and no longer pay for Putin's war machine. But we need to make sure, again, that the alliance is as strong as it can possibly be as soon as possible. We responded to all of these incursions, air incursions, with strength, whether it's shooting down the drones in Poland or whether it's escorting the fighter jets out of Estonian airspace. Each and every time, NATO has demonstrated capabilities, strength, and a willingness to do even more if necessary.